1 week before the apocalypse. To hide from my mother. Première planète. A half-year RV road trip for myself. However, the sudden arrival of the apocalypse turned my originally planned relaxing trip into a perilous escape for survival. À Montago. The mother I hadn't seen in over 20 years for the sake of her newly turned 18-year-old son coveted the house I had paid for in full. For this, she didn't hesitate to act like a shrew, making a huge scene at my workplace, successfully getting me fired. I have no blood affection left for her. And I absolutely do not want to have any further entanglements with her in the future. So, I simply sold the house and drove my RV away from that fast-paced city. On the highway, heading south. I didn't know how long I had been driving. The sky grew darker, and the rain became heavier. More and more large trucks pulled over into the emergency lane. I drove to a service area 2 kilometers away and also stopped. I ran through the rain into the service area hall, grabbed a few skewers of Odin, bought some meat zongzi nearby, and went to the convenience store. I picked out 2 boxes of self-heating hot pot, a few bags of biscuits and potato chips, an umbrella, and asked the clerk for a box of coffee and 2 boxes of mineral water, asking him to help me carry them to the RV. There weren't many customers in the store, so the clerk readily agreed after ringing me up. After the items were loaded into the vehicle, I put the zongzi in the fridge, opened myself to pair it, and casually scrolled through videos while eating my Odin. A clip from a zombie movie flashed by, followed by a video about picking wild mushrooms, because I lingered on the mushroom picking video for a while. The algorithm consecutively recommended several related contents to me. Looking at the bubbling mushroom hot pot on the screen, I made a decision about the destination for this trip. I looked out the window. The rain showed no signs of easing up. It really reminded me of the huge flood in the north many years ago. It seemed to have started with a heavy rain during such hot weather too. This felt ominous. I was driving alone on the highway. If the roads were closed, it would be a huge trouble. I grabbed my umbrella and ran back into the convenience store and bought another 2 boxes of self-heating hot pots, 2 boxes of water, some soft bread, and a box of 8 treasure porridge. The clerk on duty was still the same young man. He didn't talk much, but actively helped me load the stuff into the RV after I paid. Only when leaving did he say, "Don't worry, they probably won't close the roads. I just checked the weather forecast. It shouldn't rain tomorrow." Première tankédime. And closed the vehicle door. Regardless of tomorrow's weather, it's highly likely I'll be spending the night here today. I moved my RV to a parking spot near the police duty room. I checked all doors and windows, and neatly organized the items I bought from the store. After a simple wash, I lay in bed listening to the rain outside, and drifted into a daze before falling asleep when Première woke up with was femme. The sound of the rain was still very loud. The weather forecast had changed from yesterday's sunny to torrential downpour. The forecast for the following days was exactly the same. I shook myself awake, washed up, ate a can of porridge, and decided to continue my journey. As the sky gradually brightened, I finally entered another province. The rain had lessened significantly, and my driving speed increased. Approaching noon, I pulled into a large service area. I filled up the gas tank, ate a bowl of beef noodles, and ordered, to limited time, returning McDonald's buckets, taking them back to the RV. I kept driving, occasionally grabbing a chicken wing. After driving over 1,000 kilometers, I hadn't encountered a single city where it wasn't raining. By the time the sky turned dark again, I had already entered Sichuan. I chose another service area and stopped. At least, it was only light rain here. I got off to eat a bowl of don don noodles, only to hear from passing pedestrians that the rain here had only just lightened up slightly. From yesterday until this morning, it was pouring heavily. Some parts of the city were even flooded, and several sections of the highway were temporarily closed. Listening to this, I silently opened the weather app on my phone. I swiped through the tourist cities I had previously added and visited. Goodness, this was ridiculous. It was raining absolutely everywhere. Did a whole tear in the sky. After eating, I returned to the RV and my phone suddenly started ringing. I glanced at the screen. It was an acquaintance, a college classmate of mine. We were the top liberal arts scholars of our city that year, and both enrolled in our university's journalism department. He had pursued me during college. Even after I rejected him, he remained a bright and graceful young man. He even tried to persuade me when he found out I gave up my grad school recommendation. Hello? Shan Yu. It's Wei Yixing. How have you been lately? I've been quite well. Did you need something from me? That's good. Nothing in particular. It's just that I received some news. Some things might happen soon. If you can take time off from work, try your best to do so. Stockpile more supplies at home and minimize going out, or don't go out at all. Wei Yixing's workplace dictated that he would know more inside information than others. Not to mention, his father was a high-ranking city official, and his mother seemed to be a chief researcher at some institute. Is there another pandemic? Not exactly. These matters are still strictly classified. I can't say much more. Just remember to stockpile supplies and go out less. No. It's best not to go out at all. Every na few die the warnings. When that happens, it might trigger panic buying. You must prepare early. I didn't tell Wei Yixing that I had just sold my house and now only had an RV as my shelter. If it were a small-scale problem, Wei Yixing wouldn't be so serious about repeatedly warning me. But if a situation similar to the pandemic year really occurred, hotel, restaurants, and the service industry might also shut down. Tourist attractions would likely close too. If I end up living in the RV long-term by then, I'm afraid the dozen boxes of self-heating hot pots and porridge on the vehicle won't do much good. I really need to stockpile as much as possible. Thank you for the warning. I will keep that in mind. You take care of yourself too. On the other end of the line, rapid, beeping warning sounds could be heard. Wei Yixing suddenly spoke faster. Shan Yu, stay safe. After all this passes, I want to see you again. The phone abruptly disconnected after the call was cut off. I tried calling again. It didn't go through, so I didn't persist. I just replied with a text message. If a pandemic of that scale really happens, and I survive safely because of your warning, I definitely owe you a meeting to thank you in person. Time was tight. I started the RV and headed toward the nearest highway exit. After driving continuously in the rain for nearly an hour, I finally arrived at the closest large city. Even though it was already past 9 p.m., the city's nightlife remained bustling. Along the way, I had already figured out the plan for the rest of my journey. I was originally on a road trip and camping trip to relax. I might as well extend the duration even further. Originally, I planned to slowly buy the supplies I needed for the trip. After reaching my destination, but now there's no telling which day I'm at quarantine. So, I might as well prepare everything comprehensively. As closing time approached, there weren't many people in the supermarket. Because I needed to buy a lot of things, I walked straight to a clerk upon entering and explained my intentions to her. Hearing my request, her eyes lit up. A big customer. Please wait a moment. Manager, we have a VIP customer here. A slightly older male manager heard the commotion and walked over. I'm sorry, miss. I'm just a summer part-timer here. I can't arrange all this. I've called our manager over to help you. When the manager arrived, the young girl quickly explained the situation to him. The manager smiled at me and calmly asked what I needed. Premier told him that I was preparing for a long-distance road trip and needed to buy rice, flour, grain, storable fruits and vegetables, dry goods, vegetarian foods, camping equipment, and essential feminine hygiene products. All calculated for a 6-month supply, and I needed them to send staff to help me load the vehicle. This was a tourist city, with travelers coming and going constantly, although requests like mine weren't common. The manager had encountered them before. Thus, he calmly agreed. We roughly discussed the items I needed. During the process, the manager even helped me check for any omissions. Then he called over 2 young men to fetch the boxed items I needed from the warehouse. He took the initiative to grab 2 shopping carts and pushed one himself, giving the other to me, helping me pick out the rest of the miscellaneous items. The young girl took the opportunity to promote some items. Miss, our hot pot bases and bobo chicken. Seasonings here are very famous. I even stockpile them at home myself. They are really delicious. Plus, out in the wild, there's no ingredient a pack of hot pot base can't fix. Would you like to take some? You make a good point. But I haven't tried this brand before, so I don't know which flavor is the best. I'll rely on you to pick a few flavors for me. Mix enough for 2 boxes, please. Thanks. You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my job, after all. After I checked out, the manager led the 2 young men to help carry the items to the packing lot. Everything was sorted into cardboard boxes, according to the order of use and category. They packed them as tightly as possible, then wrote the item names on the boxes and taped them up. By the time everything was loaded, the calories from the bowl of don don noodles I ate at the service area were completely burned off. My stomach was growling with hunger. Thinking that I had delayed the manager and his staff from getting off work, I invited them to join me for a late-night supper. However, the manager declined, saying they were scheduled to work overtime today anyway. as there was another batch of goods to unload tonight. Since they still had work to do, I naturally didn't force them. After they left, I locked the vehicle door and chose a hot pot restaurant full of local accents. I picked a corner seat and ordered a table full of food. After eating and drinking my fill, I booked a room at a hotel near the square. After washing up, I lay in bed tossing and turning, unable to sleep. I took out my phone and remembered the day my mother caused a scene at my company. It was the first time I had seen her in the 24 years since she abandoned me. My original name was Yombuhui. It was given by my mother. My biological father's surname was a street thug. My mother was an honors student, but fell in love with him in high school. Ignoring her family's objections, she got together with my father. She learned to smoke and drink, and slept with my father during her sophomore year. She kept the relationship a secret until after her 18th birthday, when she stole her family's savings and eloped with him right before the college entrance exams. By then, she was already 4 months pregnant. She left a letter declaring she left voluntarily, preventing my grandparents from filing a missing person report. My grandfather already had a bad heart, and the anger triggered a heart attack. When my grandmother rushed home for money, she found the savings gone and had to borrow everywhere, which delayed his treatment. My grandfather tragically passed away, although my grandmother reported the theft because my mother used a fake ID. The case was eventually left unsolved. My parents took the stolen money to Guangdong. My father had a mind for business and quickly made some money. Influenced by a TV show, my mother named me Yang Buhui. Because they hadn't reached the legal marriage age, I was never officially registered. When I was 3, my father was busy with business. Out of loneliness, my mother started an affair with a mahjong friend. My father died in a car crash while rushing back to catch them. After my father's death, the property went to my mother. When she and her mahjong partner decided to get married, she viewed me as a burden and a stain. She didn't want to raise me, so she brought me back to our hometown. She gave me my grandmother's address and hastily left. I chased after her to no avail and was taken to the police station by passersby, who then contacted my grandmother to pick me up. My grandmother was very cold to me, but she did her best to raise and educate me. The year I got into college, my grandmother passed away from long-term liver cancer, leaving her savings and property to me. I used the savings to finish college. After I started working, the old house was demolished and I received the compensation money. I saved diligently in the city where I worked, and 2 years later, I bought an apartment in full. Now, my life was stable. The day I received her call was August 4th. After over 20 years, I immediately recognized her voice, feeling only utter disgust. Her initial attempts to play the emotional card failed, and she quickly revealed her true intentions. She found out the old house was demolished, claimed she was the primary heir, and accused me of not informing her back then. She demanded I return the demolition compensation with interest. She even demanded the property I bought in my work city, Premier Informer, that before my grandmother died, the property and savings were unconditionally gifted to me, and she had no right to inherit anything. She immediately changed her strategy, claiming I had a younger brother, and that if my grandmother had known she had a grandson, she would have left an inheritance for him. She demanded I transfer my apartment to my brother, who was about to go to college in the capital. I bluntly told her to take legal action if she had an issue, and immediately hung up the phone. However, she didn't give up. Not long after, she directly barged into the media company where I worked. She screamed in the office area, rolling on the floor, making a public scene, demanding the property. My boss told me to take time off to handle my personal affairs. Witnessing her ugly behavior, combined with my long accumulated burnout and underlying self-destructive tendencies, I decided to resign. I immediately spoke to my boss, voluntarily handed over all unreported news materials on hand, my work accounts, and promised not to work in this industry for a year. My boss readily agreed and privately transferred a sum of money to me. My phone contained a text message she sent. Don't think that just because you don't go to work and hide at home, I can't do anything about you. You wait. I'll let all your neighbors know. They, you are an ungrateful wretch who doesn't even respect her biological mother. I deleted the text. Checked the time on my phone. It was already 2:14 a.m. Tossing the phone to the bedside, I curled entirely into the blanket and fell into a heavy sleep. When Première woke up, I grabbed my phone to check. It was only 6 a.m. My sleepiness had vanished without a trace. I checked out of the room, went downstairs, and walked toward the parking lot, carrying 2 bags of steamed buns. As the vehicle drove out of the underground parking lot, I realized the rain outside had become heavy again. There weren't many pedestrians on the street, but there were continuous, muffled honking sounds. Getting back on the highway, my speed still couldn't pick up. Visibility during a torrential downpour is just too poor. By 7 or 8 p.m., I was only 2 kilometers away from the highway exit toll booth. I relaxed a bit and found time to turn on the radio. The government had started calling on people to stock up on supplies and quarantine at home. While waiting in line at the toll booth, I glanced into the back of my RV, feeling no panic in my heart. With my current reserves, even if I were quarantined, I wouldn't suffer regarding food and drink. After getting off the highway, I drove slowly into the city. I barely saw anyone wearing masks on the road. It seemed the virus hadn't spread to this area yet. Première filtre live, and decided to stay here for the night to get a good rest. I found a parking lot. The location was a cultural tourism center. Arriving at a new place naturally means trying the local specialties. I ordered a mushroom hot pot and added portions of red onion and porcini mushrooms. The waiter brought the pot to the table and repeatedly instructed me, do not stir it with a spoon beforehand. Do not taste the broth. Boil for another 20 minutes after it starts bubbling. And, as per usual practice, did not provide me with chopsticks, yet I acknowledged the rules and began playing on my phone out of sheer boredom. My mother had sent a lot more text messages. This time, she sounded even more furious. I have already filed a lawsuit against you. I am suing you for illegal appropriation of property and unfilial conduct. I deleted them one by one as I read them. After reading, I had no intention of replying to her. Everything about her had nothing to do with me anymore. What she did to me back then, even if it didn't constitute the crime of abandonment, counted as failing to fulfill her duty of maintenance toward me. Even if she really succeeded in her lawsuit, the most she could get from me would be the minimum monthly amount for alimony. The mushrooms were fully cooked, and I started my meal. To be honest, poisonous mushrooms are truly incredibly fresh and savory when fully cooked. When I walked out of the restaurant, I felt like my stomach was stretched to its limit. I opened my umbrella and walked out the door, turned on the walking navigation, and headed to a pharmacy 100 meters away to buy some Jianwei Shaoxi tablets to help my digestion. Unexpectedly, from afar, I witnessed a mushroom poisoning scene. From a distance, I saw one person roaring and pouncing on another. One chased, the other fled in the rain. And then the fleeing person was caught and doomed. People around were shouting to call an ambulance. Holding my umbrella, I quickened my pace, got far away from the scene, and headed to the pharmacy indicated on the navigation. At the pharmacy, I bought the digestion tablets, swallowed a few right on the spot, and thinking about the possibility of being quarantined once I arrived at the campsite, I conveniently bought some daily medicines as well. The digestion tablets didn't take effect immediately. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, so I decided to continue driving through the night to the campsite. It was only when I got back on the highway that I realized something was wrong. The vehicles heading out of the city at the toll gate had formed a long queue. We étaient heureux. Were there suddenly so many cars leaving the city? Even the ETC lanes had queues forming. I found a moment to check my phone and learned that the local government had just announced the implementation of regional lockdowns. The very area where I was just eating had already been designated as a quarantine zone. I couldn't help but feel relieved that I had left a step early. Otherwise, I would have been quarantined in that parking lot. Even though the rain was still pouring heavily, I continuously kept my foot on the gas to accelerate. Until, not far ahead, a car suddenly seemed to lose control, crashing into the guardrail. Several cars rear-ended consecutively. I stepped on the brakes, smoothly decelerated, and drove past them. Instinctively, I turned my head to look. In that instant, I couldn't help but shiver. Premier actualisa. The woman in the passenger seat, biting into the neck of the person in the driver's seat. Witnessing two neck-biting incidents in a single day. I definitely wouldn't naively believe anymore that these were phenomena caused by mushroom poisoning. In an instant to my mind. Could it be that Wei Yixing's warning to stockpile goods and stay home wasn't because of a pandemic outbreak, but because he knew the zombie apocalypse was going to spiral out of control? With one hand on the steering wheel, I kept driving forward. And with my other hand, I picked up my phone and rapidly dialed Wei Yixing's number. No one answered. I used a VPN on my phone to open an overseas browser. Overwhelming amounts of bloody zombie videos flooded the screen. I knew my original plan was no longer viable. Under these circumstances, I absolutely could not allow myself to be quarantined together with a group of strangers. My RV had enough survival resources, and I could not afford to test human nature. As première drove. I kept swiping the map on my phone with my finger, searching for a new place to stay. After taking an exit, most people took the provincial highway, heading toward national routes and other major roads. But I, after following them for a bit, decisively turned onto a hidden dirt road. Through the fields, the navigation kept yelling at me to make a U-turn. The road got narrower and narrower, and there wasn't a single street light, even when the navigation showed no road ahead. I continued pushing forward. I knew that past this muddy stretch, there would be an abandoned concrete road up ahead. And beyond, that was a nature reserve. This place had been a hunting ground decades ago. Later, due to the severe impact of overhunting, and to protect local species and the ecosystem. The hunting ground was abolished, and this area was designated as a nature reserve. Première drovniervi. Resolutely crushing the weeds, heading straight into the dark forest. Occasionally, a few large rocks would tumble down in front of or behind my vehicle. Originally, I planned to get gas on the highway when I set off the next day. But the unexpected events on the road made me forget about this matter entirely. Now, the fuel warning lights had already come on. I had to find a suitable place to park as quickly as possible before the fuel ran out. I kept driving deeper into the area, going all the way to the edge of the dense forest. The vehicle consumed its last drop of fuel and stopped right there. I got out of the RVV, holding a waterproof tarp, and covered the entire vehicle with it. I securely fastened the tarp to the RV. After finishing all this, I got back in and closed the door. Fortunately, even though the vehicle was out of gas, the living power supply system inside was powered by an independent solar battery. I took a hot shower. Afraid of catching a cold, I also brewed a cup of cold medicine. After drinking it all, I collapsed onto the bed and fell into a deep sleep. I slept incredibly well, not waking up until 9 a.m. the next morning. I glanced outside. The waterproof tarp covered half the window with water cascading down loudly. My phone had completely lost its signal. There were 8 Songzi left in the fridge. Taking advantage of the remaining battery, I boiled them all and hung them up. It said they don't spoil easily this way. I unplugged the refrigerator as well. I didn't know when the rain would stop, so the battery power had to be used sparingly. To save electricity, the only hot food I could eat every day recently was the self-heating hot pots. Eating my food while staring out the window, I couldn't imagine what the outside world looked like now. Was it a false alarm? And the situation was quickly brought under control. Oh! Did the zombie apocalypse truly arrive? If Wei Yixing could know in advance, then the country should have been prepared, and the situation would be contained quickly, right? The rain finally stopped a month later. The high-altitude sun beat down fiercely on my face. I took deep breaths of the fresh air and tied all the knots and pulled down the waterproof tarp. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, shining onto the solar panels on the roof. After a meal, I finally regained my energy. I cleaned the toilet and cleared out all the trash that had piled up over the past month and a half. The next day, I finally had the time to explore the surroundings. There were many mushrooms in the mountains after the heavy rain, but the ones I could safely recognize and cook for myself were few in number. Only when I was lucky enough to find easily distinguishable would I pick some. After the weather cleared up, the vehicle's solar panels could fully charge about 3 kilowatt-hours of electricity. It was every day in the mountains, so I didn't need to run the AC, which was plenty for my daily living needs. Once I had surplus electricity, I remembered that in the luggage compartment under my RV, I had packed a drone. It was an M300 I bought when I first started working. I dug the drone out from the corner. One spent a few days organizing and taking inventory of my supplies. Now, after nearly 2 months of living without resupply, I realized that my stockpile, even if eaten sparingly, would last me 6 months at most. So, taking advantage of the inventory, not only did I bring out the drone, but I also took out my tent, a folding shovel for camping, and a fishing rod that was useless up here, pulling them all out from storage. I gathered all the empty self-heating hot pot bowls I had finished, sorted them all out, washed them clean, and used the shovel to fill them with soil as planting containers. I cut sprouted potatoes into pieces and planted them separately in the boxes. I also separated and planted cloves of garlic one by one. As for the dried chili seeds, I moistened a leftover cotton face towel with water and kept them indoors to germinate. As for the ginger, I just found a patch of land with soft soil and planted it directly. Then gathered some stones to form a circle as a marker. Over a dozen days later, my chili seeds, after being planted into the soil, had sprouted to small leaves. The potatoes were also transplanted into the plot of land I had cultivated over the past few days. After draining my battery to charge it up, the drone was finally fully charged. Carrying the drone on my back, I climbed towards the mountain peak and started a test flight in an open area. I hovered over the mountain roads for dozens of kilometers. Along this stretch, I temporarily saw no other vehicles or obvious tracks of pedestrians. After flying a bit further, the image transmission started getting choppy, and the battery was draining quickly. To prevent the drone from running out of power and failing to make it back, I initiated the return sequence. And it was at this moment I saw that terrifying scene. On the highway, there was a dense cluster of crashed vehicles. Weaving among the cars were aimless walking corpses who started sprinting after the sound of the drone. They seemed no slower than a living human. I couldn't believe it. Scenes straight out of a movie had actually happened in reality. Staying in the mountains for over 2 months, although I had prepared for the worst, I secretly still held out hope that the zombie outbreak would be quickly contained. Just the footage captured from this stretch of highway was so tragic. I truly couldn't imagine what the densely populated cities must look like now. I flew the drone in a loop before bringing it back, also taking the opportunity within a radius of several kilometers around me. There were no obvious signs of human activity. On my way back, I casually foraged for wild vegetables and fruits I spotted. I needed to take advantage of the good weather to dry and store as much food as possible. Once winter arrived, gathering food would likely not be so easy anymore. I tried my best to avoid touching those canned or vacuum-sealed foods, treating them as my winter reserves or as emergency supplies for unforeseen circumstances. My grandmother had truly done her best to nurture me. When I was young, I watched the Olympics and thought archery was cool. She sent me to receive professional training. I still had my old bow and arrows in the RV. After I started hunting and foraging, my days became extremely busy. When I returned to the campsite, I also had to collect wood fuel for the coming winter. I set up a canopy in the woods behind the RV, chopped the collected wood into suitable sizes and stacked it behind the vehicle. I carried many stones, mixed them with mud under the canopy, and built a windproof outdoor stove. The dried wild vegetables were packed in plastic bags and stored inside the tent. The day I realized the weather was turning cold, I woke up and found a thin layer of white frost on the plants outside. I took out my phone, which I hadn't looked at in a long time, and plugged it into charge. Only then did I realize that today was the start of winter Lidong. Ishin Myomton that's on this day. There was still a bit of an opened bag of flour left. After making and eating dumplings, I went out to hunt. After walking for about 2 or 3 kilometers, I saw a few upright feathers among the withered mugwort bushes. After a few chirping sounds, I followed the blood trail and found the prey with my arrow stuck in it. Having struggled forward for a dozen meters, I carried the pheasant toward the small pond, planning to clean it nearby. While scooping water, I found that standing in my usual spot, reaching the water had become somewhat difficult. The water level of the pond had actually dropped. It was then I finally realized that, ever since that rainstorm, it hadn't rained in this area, even once. I comforted myself that heaven wouldn't leave me at a dead end. It won't dry up completely. But the next day, I still got up very early to prepare for potential disasters. I started setting up animal traps around the area. For the next few days, I was constantly checking the traps, using wood in a cleared-out, open space. I built a makeshift smokehouse. All the captured animals, after being cleaned, were smoked into jerky. The weather was getting colder and colder. By the time I felt my fingers stiffening from the cold, the driver's cabin and the passenger seat were already hung full of various types of jerky that I had been smoking day and night recently. The plastic bags in the tent used for storing dried vegetables had all been used up. I didn't stop to rest the entire winter. À toute première que nous, there were large animals in this nature reserve. The place I was currently at was on the absolute outskirts. So, in the month since I arrived, I hadn't encountered any. But I never expected that the large animal I'd stumble upon would be a wild boar. It drinking from the pond where I fetch my cooking water. But it actually tried to take a dump in it. I initially just wanted to scare it away, but my arrow accidentally hit its belly. It snapped my precious arrow, one of only 12 I had, and launched a wild charge right at me. To protect myself, I shot a second arrow into its eye, hoping to calm it down a bit. But it kept ramming into the tree I had climbed up. I had already lost 2 arrows. I couldn't walk away with nothing. You have to understand, wild boars will eat people. In this forest today, only one of us was walking out alive. So, I turned that wild boar into a porcupine. On Chinese New Year's Eve, holding a reverent heart, I flew the drone once again. One piece of good news. The vehicles on the road had been cleared away at some point. 2 pieces of bad news. For some unknown reason, there were still no cars on the highway. And on the nearby main roads, no vehicles passed by during my observation period. The zombies hadn't been eradicated, and a few were wandering on the dirt road I took to get here. The mud road had dried up and hardened, making it very easy to walk on. There was no telling when the zombies might wander up the mountain looking for food. After all, humans aren't the only ones with flesh and blood. However, the wandering zombies served as a wake-up call to me. My cracked windshield couldn't withstand a single blow. If I kid. Even if it wasn't a zombie, any slightly larger wild animal could easily shatter it. So I decided to chop down trees within a 1-kilometer radius. This chopping went on for over 20 days. Surrounding the RV, I used mortise and tenon joints to build a crisscrossing wooden wall, leaving only a pre-made gate aligned with the RV door. The water level in the pond dropped another 20 centimeters. I started trying to find other water sources. But aside from a few tiny trickles that could only moisten the soil, even form a puddle. I found no other water sources nearby. Mi-d'April. The weather was still quite cold. While carrying my bucket to the pond for water, I saw snowflakes starting to drift down from the sky, flake by flake, like sprinkled salt. In the blink of an eye, the ground turned white. Itois absurde. It was snowing. After the snow, the solar panels were completely covered. This was when the outdoor stove proved its worth. I didn't know how long this snow would last. Fortunately, chopping and storing water were part of my daily routine. A rough calculation showed my stock could last for 2 months. I didn't believe this snow could last until late June. I fumbled for my phone, which had 60% battery left. I wasn't sure if no one had signal, or if it was just me, because I was in the nature reserve. This absurd weather continued all the way into June. It was mid-June, and it was still snowing. My electricity had run out long ago. I started sleeping and waking with the sun. The animal base supplies I had saved up since after the rainy season finally had to be brought out and eaten. On the 3rd day of running out of firewood, premier jour gavupé, I stopped shoveling snow. I would wake up, open the window for ventilation, to see it was still snowing, and just get back into bed. When hungry, I'd slice a piece of ham and eat it raw. When thirsty, I'd take a sip of mineral water. Went out to my last half-bottle au fouetter, and a single ham bone. The snow finally stopped. I held my shovel, looking around in utter bewilderment, and finally started digging from where my feet were. After clearing a path, I began to salvage my outdoor kitchen. Premier ran out to gather branches without stopping for a single moment. Branches dug out from the snow wouldn't catch fire at all. I could only bundle them up with ropes and hang them mid-air to dry. The solar panels saw the light of day again, and my phone finally charged. When I turned it on, it was already late July. Enough you day, the one of roaming of man. A few days after the anniversary, the zombie I saw before the new year finally wandered all the way up here. I didn't expect that. Even after escaping to a mountain at an altitude of over 2,000 meters, I still couldn't avoid the ordeal of killing a zombie. I traced its path and searched around, but didn't see any of its companions. They must have gotten separated from Tenon. No matter what I was doing, I was always more vigilant, deeply afraid that a zombie might jump out from some unknown place. By the end of August, the drone finally had enough charge. I flew it around for a patrol and found a lone zombie. I memorized its rough direction, then flew towards the highway. It was so despairing. The roads still hadn't reopened. I started to frequently use the drone for patrols. But the drone's operational range had its limits. The furthest distance it could capture was just that highway. By October, the zombies I had spotted earlier had all been harmlessly disposed of by me. I also gave up on flying the drone to check the highway, because I was facing a new crisis. The water level in the pond had dropped drastically. I started taking the drone and exploring along the path the flash flood had flowed down, trying to find a new water source. I did find a river, but given that my campsite was immovable, the existence of that river didn't mean much to me, because the walking distance was simply too far. I also started considering the possibility of migrating. But, in the wild, I really didn't have the courage to abandon my RV. Not to mention, I still had a small plantation here. Winter arrived. The drone could see there was still water in the riverbed in the valley Aldefingli. But I had no choice left. There was nothing but mud left in the pond. I began taking inventory of my supplies and preparing to migrate down the mountain. I packed my dry food and tools on my back, picked up the water bucket, and set out. I walked down the mountain along the riverbed. Suddenly, a roaring sound came from above. A formation of planes, trailing long-colored smoke, flew right over my head. In the sky, 3 words gradually appeared. Lockdown lifted. À petit moment, no. That this exact scene was appearing in the skies all across the country. The government was using this method to tell all the solitary survivors. The disaster was over. I ran back to the RV, dug out the drone, and flew it in the opposite direction of the river, toward the highway. Traffic had resumed. I couldn't hold back my tears. Ituraut island is too. Iturned out to rumensi. I shouldered my backpack once again. Buttitim. I was walking in the direction of the highway. I returned to the city. This once bustling, tourist city was visibly desolate. The railways and roads were still under repair. All flights were temporarily government managed, providing a team free flight for a limited period, transporting survivors to their desired cities. I boarded a flight back to the capital. I had to fulfill a promise made before the apocalypse. The moment I stepped off the plane, I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of coming home. Chez nous. A voice from my memory called out. I sharply looked up. Wei Yixing was standing by the exit barricade. Wavingatme. Seeing me look up, he ran toward me quickly. Somehow, I started running too. We broke through the crowd and hugged each other tightly. Shen Yu, welcome home. Wei Yixing, I'm back.